All right, here we go. Welcome everybody to our second virtual Jackalope users group. Let's see, what would this be? Our 8th actual high desert, at least, users group.
Yeah.
Is that right? 8?
Well, I'm not sure. We might have skipped a year at first because we still were working on the whole setup. So
Sure. And we didn't have
Laura might know exactly, but 8 years of high desert, but I think maybe 7 meetings.
Yeah. And we're getting, if you include Chaparral, we're getting close to 30. I think the first was in 93, so. All right, well, let's go. Let's start with introductions, and I'm assuming everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
All right, well, I'm Joe Wilkinson, president of High Desert Traffic, and you'll be hearing my voice a little bit this morning. In addition to running the company, I'm also part of the technical staff, and most of you have probably talked to me at some point. So, Catherine?
I'm Catherine. I'm technical support and many other functions, and probably work with everyone at some point with emails, phone calls, questions, and help. You'll also be hearing from me after this introduction section on a couple of the items in our agenda.
Cool. And I'm just going alphabetically here.
Okay.
So, Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy Quintana. I do the reports.
And she's our statistics guru for cluster analysis and things like that. Drew?
Hello, Drew Pullum. I am a business analyst for High Desert. I will also be speaking with you guys tomorrow for a presentation on the agenda, and I help with implementations and a wide array of other things, especially documentation.
Laura?
Good morning. I'm Laura, and I do almost what Catherine does, maybe to a lesser extent. I do technical support issues, customer service things, version testing, and then also when we're able to have our conference outside of the virtual world, I organize conference sorts of things. So good morning, everyone.
Yes, and let's hope this is the last of these. Susie.
Hello, everybody. I'm just looking at everyone's names, and it is just really great to have everybody on. I am Susie Ford. I know many of you in my former role with Wistat as a section chief, and now I am with High Desert. I am their product manager, and I work with the team in various capacities. More on the front end of the analysis and some design specifications.
Indeed. All right, rather than go through everybody else on the list, like we normally would if we were in person, we decided we'd skip that since it's less exciting since we're not going to be going out to eat together here. So let's just go ahead and move on to the next slide. So this is our second virtual meeting. We are going to do everything in our power to make sure next year's meeting is in person. This format does have some advantages. We are able to get more people, of course. In our in-person one, we're limited to how many people can fly and get here, and then limited usually 2 per state. Of course, virtually, you can have as many as you'd like. So there's that advantage, but the disadvantage is I just think it's so much more valuable to all be in person and make those relationships, and it's easier to absorb things in person, in my opinion. So we will do our best, of course. It's not really in our control, but should the virus be nice and cooperate, we'll be in person next year. Laura, where are we next year? Is it Santa Fe or Reno?
The hope was that we would be in Santa Fe. That was where we were supposed to be 2 years ago. Although I suppose we could swap them and do Reno if New Mexico's a little bit more closed down, but most things are opening. We could talk about it, but the plan was for Santa Fe.
Okay. Yeah, that is the problem. I would have been white knuckling it by now if the city declared a state of emergency last month, and I would have been a stress ball if we were doing it in person here. So I'm glad we didn't. All right, so this meeting, we're going to be going over some pretty cool things. We're going to be, excuse me, Catherine's going to be talking about the next release, which is going to have, again, some pretty good, nice functionality that's, I think a lot of you will be using. And we'll be demoing that functionality throughout the course of this meeting. And we'll talk about release notes, and then we have a user's guide that Catherine's going to show you. Laura and Catherine are going to go over some helpful tips just for using Jackalope, probably maybe things that you haven't seen before or have noticed before. They will go over that and, of course, answer any questions you have. And hopefully everybody will learn from that. At 9 Pacific, we're going to be going over a mobile app design, and just a little intro for that. We've been saying we're going to have a mobile app for literally years now, but there's been other design priorities, and it's never happened. But the time is right for several reasons, which I'll go in later. And we have a pretty solid, we think, design that's not going to take a lot of resources from our perspective. And so we'll be going over that at 9. Lunch. Then we're going to talk about HPMS, and we're going to go over some of the concepts of using HPMS in Jackalope. Some people haven't used the new interface, so we'll be looking at the new interface, what you could do to make your job easier. Laura's going to go over some new reports that we had last year. And then Stephen, who I saw was on, is going to go over NetMech's closing plenary session at 12:40. And then we're going to close out the day with our one of the new interfaces that you're going to see, the CAT, which stands for Short-Term Count Analysis Tool, which is pretty cool. And it also will allow you to do hourly purges, which has not been allowed before. Then we'll break, and then tomorrow we're going to look at the new sitemap, followed by Drew's going to lead a discussion with several states about some challenges you've had this year, or all years, specifically with segmentation of your routes and how you deal with that. How do you freeze it, the calendar year, or do you freeze it at all? Those sort of questions will be tomorrow morning, as well as a QA. And then we're going to talk about our new roads and highways interface, which is actually more general. It's just sort of our general ESRI interface that allows Jackalope to synchronize with roads and highway feature classes, or layers specifically. And then at 12, there's a short discussion about a particular length issue that came up, and there'll be some discussion involving that. Following that, Margaret's going to be talking about NatMech in Boise at 12:30. And then everybody's going to talk about challenges for the upcoming year, and then we have our usual end of session. Where do we go from here? You guys have your users meeting, and then you give us feedback. So, and we were able to compress it into 2 days, which is good. And that's another thing we probably won't do when we're in person, because it's just easier to have, shorter days, to deal with the travel stuff. But yeah, that is what we're going to be doing this next 2 days. So we had, it was a pretty good year for us, although from a marketing perspective, not so much. We lost a contract, we lost a bid, or an RFP that we were really hoping for. New York finally went out to bid. Drakebo got it, and we lost it we almost didn't, but basically we didn't have a mobile app. That was the main thing. And so that's one of the reasons it's also been. And Susie, by the way, you're not muted.
I see
then,
that.
You're about to talk.
I went. I know. I'm
Sorry.
Choke. Okay. Besides New York, early 2020, and this actually was pre-COVID. If any of you can remember that time, so back in February, we were contacted by Virginia. They had a contract with Spy Pond Partners to work with them on a traffic software replacement program. And they were actually taking a two-prong approach. They were working with the consultant to, one, look at the business side, and two, IT look at the technical infrastructure side. So end of 2020, we actually High Desert filled out a technical survey for them, the architecture they were curious about, did an online demo, and then a few of you, and I want to say thank you to Kansas, Wyoming, were contacts for us, and I don't know if the business side from Virginia did contact you, but they wanted some references and talked to some of our clients. And then you sort of fast forward from end of December 2020 into early 2021, they were still working on their RFP and pulling it together. Fast forward now to September, it's going to take them another 6 months. So I think, and many of you won't be surprised, that the COVID thing has really slowed down some of the large efforts that the DOTs are working on. So they're thinking 2022, we might see a RFP for Virginia, which High Desert will keep an eye out on. And then we've also, with Arkansas, we met with Arkansas again, early 2020, and they're not looking at an RFP, they're actually looking at doing an RFI first. So they'll do a request for information, and we will be keeping an eye on that. But so far, here we are again in end of the last quarter of 2021, and their RFI hasn't come out yet. So a lot of slowdown, which is part of the reason on Tuesday when we do the group session is to hear more so some of the challenges you guys are experiencing due to COVID. And I think those are the two we had, Joe, Virginia and Arkansas.
To 3 again. I think Transmetric's been kind of not been bidding. I'm not sure why. We haven't had any NapMex or anything that I could go talk to them and see what's going on. Drakewell won New York. They have a good system. I think once we get our app, though, we'll still be top dog. And then MS2, yeah, I think they're doing okay. They didn't do as well as in New York, so that's our our competition, which is kind of held steady for, good Lord, a decade now. Well, Drakewell's relatively new, I suppose, but yeah, it's not exactly an active market for sure. All right,